There we go. What makes today particularly exciting for us is that for many of you that are here, this is actually your first interaction with the Fair Education Alliance. So who are we? Well, we are a coalition of over 250 member organisations who are all working collectively to ensure no child's success is limited by their socioeconomic background. Our members include delivery organisations, schools, colleges, universities and education institutions, researchers and think tanks, businesses, funders, teaching unions and others across the education ecosystem. And this working group and this workshop specifically are part of delivering our co-developed youth engagement strategy. And the aim of that strategy is that young people, including those who face barriers to accessing a fair education, are respected and heard in all decisions affecting their education. It's also how we continue the work of the I Will Education Sector Group, which is why we're delighted to have been working with Helen and the I Will Fund to bring you today's session. And the I Will Fund is a joint investment from the National Lottery Community Fund and the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, who are working in collaboration with over 30 funders to bring together organisations who all contribute funding to embed meaningful social action into the lives of young people. But that is enough about us. What do we have in store for you today? Well, it's an incredible lineup of speakers, interactive sessions and group discussions, kicking off with this first one with a focus on learnings from delivery. Then at about 4 o'clock, we'll focus on inclusive programming. And possibly the one that I'm looking forward to most is the youth-led session showcasing young people's social action and discussing their feedback for us for how we can better support them to take part in social action. And don't panic, there are breaks between each of the sessions. So I will stop sharing my screen there. It's not letting me stop. There we go. Okay, maybe not. Yes, there we go. Sorry about that. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the chair for this first session, who is Dan Vogel. And we are very lucky to have Dan currently interning for the FEA, but today he is also here in his social action capacity as a former activist with Durham University People of Colour Association. So I'll hand over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Becca. And as Becca said, yes, I'm just going to start off today just by briefly talking about my experiences running some anti-racism workshops while at university. Keep it very brief because, as I'm sure all of you are, I'm very excited to get on to hearing about our guest range of experiences with youth social action. So I graduated from Durham last year. And while I was there, myself and a handful of students of colour decided to start some small-scale anti-racism workshops based on our kind of student college model. 2 years later, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, the university became significantly more interested in actively taking an anti-racist stance. So we, using the wider University People of Colour Association, proposed to the Vice-Chancellor that these workshops be developed and expanded across the university college community, namely integrated into Freshers Week. So I'm going to present some of the key takeaways and lessons that we learned. So the context of these workshops was, as I said, for all incoming first-year students in Freshers Week and were compulsory to attend. So in terms of developing engaging yet pedagogical content, we found it really important to lay down ground rules. We found that the majority accepted the concept that the workshops were not necessarily a space for open discussion, but instead was a social research-led education session with the opportunity for discourse in smaller groups, not across the whole session. This was about creating a safe space for young people of colour in the audience and, of course, maintaining an organised time structure. Taking time to address contentious definitions was important, as we found that there was a great diversity of experience and knowledge on racism amongst young people. The goal was to provide a framework by which people could continue to educate themselves, recognising the inquisitiveness that many young people have about the world, particularly at the transitional point of going to university. Switching between whole group presentations and small group discussion with ability to feedback on set tasks and questions was really important. Facilitators were placed in groups, and this was key to keeping things on track and limiting digressions in the session as a whole. For example, direct questions to presenters during the middle of the session. placing the social action in historic context was really important. So providing historical links between contemporary racism and historic events in the UK context, particularly as obviously so many people weren't alive during some of the most significant events in the last kind of 100 years. Avoiding comparisons to other places, especially America, where it's a slightly different situation, was key. A lot of people wanted to sort of make comparisons, and we kept it within the kind of context of the UK. From the university side, keeping this as a separate project from the actual EDI department really allowed us a certain amount of creative freedom. We essentially had no stakeholders to keep happy, and we were able to really capitalize on this frantic need to take an anti-racist line by the university. So securing funding for these workshops and facilitating kind of the payment of the facilitators underline the importance and legitimacy of the workshops in the eyes of the university. So in a brief conclusion, some of the important things were facilitation, setting up concrete ground rules, primary agency to young people themselves to run and organize the workshops, payment equals legitimacy, I suppose, in higher education institutions, providing a framework for further research and knowledge accrual, tackling contentious concepts like white privilege and intersectionality with empathetic yet firm, academically supported evidence, and finally, almost most importantly, not underestimating the ability of young people to directly engage with and appraise academic social science concepts. We live in a social media epoch where ideological terminology is ever present and is often used so loosely. So that's the end for me. That's sort of my spiel. But I'm really excited to get on to hearing from some of our other panelists, and I'll just quickly introduce them now. So we have Hannah Breeze, who's a researcher from the RSA, and they'll be talking about the youth social action in primary schools research. We have Ayan Abdi, who's a director of enrichment at Mulberry School for Girls, and they'll be sharing how Mulberry support youth-initiated action at secondary and sixth form levels. Next, we've got Hannah Cohen, who's the head of programs for Bite Back 2030, and they'll be talking about their school food champions project. Next is Isaac Jones, who's the head of programs for First Give, and they'll be sharing about their work promoting youth social action in secondary schools. And then finally, to round off this session, we've got Florence Clark-Drayson, who's an association of colleges youth social action apprentice based at Leeds City College, and they'll share their experience of social action in further education college settings. One more thing, I'd just encourage you to put any questions that you have in the chat throughout, and we'll return to them at the end of the presentations. Just keep them coming in. And well, I suppose without further ado, I'd like to pass on to Hannah Breeze, researcher from RSA.
Thanks, Daniel. I think I've got some slides perfect. Thanks, Becca. So my name is Hannah. I'm a researcher at the RSA, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our action research project, which was called the Citizens of Now, High Quality Youth Social Action in Primary Schools. So next slide, please, Becca. Super. So first, perhaps I need to start off by saying why the primary phase represents such a crucial stage to first engage young people in youth social action. So research by the Jubilee Centre has found that involving young people before the age of 10 actually means that they're twice as likely to develop a commitment to social action throughout their life. This is sometimes called a habit of service. And if they start that before the age of 10, then they're twice as likely to still be involved than if they start beyond that point. So it really shows just how important it is. But as you can see from the stats also on this slide, that not enough schools, particularly primary schools, give young people the opportunity to take part at this very crucial stage in their life. Next slide. So with that in mind, and with the support of the Pairs I Will Fund, we designed, delivered and evaluated a youth social action programme for Year 4 pupils in the West Midlands, and over 500 pupils participated in the programme over 3 years. And there are others on the call today who helped make that programme possible, from people like young citizens who helped to develop training with us for teachers, and we also had external experts come in and help deliver workshops and things. So it wasn't just the RSA, it was a whole manner of people involved in the project. But what it meant was that young people, these Year 4 pupils, were allowed to lead their own social action project based on the issues that they cared about in their community, and they took actions that would make a positive difference to people and our planet. But as I mentioned, this was a piece of action research, and I'm a researcher by nature. So we also wanted to better understand things along the way. And it was really around these three things. So what are the benefits that primary age pupils experience from taking part in high quality social action? What is the role of the teacher in supporting primary age pupils to take on social action? And what are some of the challenging and enabling factors specifically to doing this in a primary school setting? Next slide, please, Becca. Thank you. So first of all, again, perhaps I should just go back to why we actually chose to call the report Citizens of Now. And the reason for that is when we talk about young people, particularly primary age children, we tend to only talk about them as having future citizenship. We don't talk about them as being citizens in their communities right here in the now, where they can make a difference. So I just wanted to share just some quick stories of how some of the young people made a difference in their communities through this project. So there were pupils at Abbey Wood First School in Redditch who wrote an impassioned and very inspiring letter to their local printing company to convince them to print hundreds of these hand-drawn kindness cards that you can just see on the screen here. And these were actually distributed to local care homes and particularly residents who'd been cut off and isolated during the pandemic. And this was something that pupils really cared about and made possible. There were also pupils at another school called St Oswald's C of E in Kidderminster, and these pupils met with local religious leaders and youth workers in their community, discussed the issue of youth homelessness. And together they actually created these lovely kindness packs that you can see, which were filled with emergency toiletries and essential items for young people who find themselves sofa surfing in their communities. And then just the final image on this screen is of pupils at Woodrow Fair School again in Redditch. And since 2019, at the start of the project, pupils have raised nearly £2,000 and over 100 kilograms have been collected of food to be donated to their local food bank. And this was particularly meaningful in this community because this is a school that has a very high percentage of free school meal pupils, and it's a very lived issue in that school community. And these are just some of the ways that the pupils did make a difference through being involved in this project. So I've shared what was possible, but of course, I also need to share what are some of the challenges to doing this in the primary phase. So Becca, if you can take us to the next slide. We kind of categorize these as two things, very practical challenges and ethical challenges. So of course, some of the biggest practical challenges is delivery. And in a primary school that largely relies on class teachers' time, capacity and skill set. And committing already stretched teachers and staffing budgets might pose some of the biggest issues to doing this in the primary school, particularly for very small primary schools. Teachers need a lot of support in the form of training and sometimes even working with external organisations that can bring youth social expertise into the school community. But one of the things that we found that really helped overcome some of these teacher level barriers was the buy-in from the senior leadership team. If they recognise the benefits to pupils, staff and the community, they can sometimes make it possible, and there has to be that will there. The other thing that then was very much around like the ethical challenges. So some schools might have concerns about age appropriateness of doing youth social action with very young children of this age. For example, we did a teacher tap survey and found that only 52% of teachers felt that tackling food poverty was an age appropriate issue. But we know from our own project that actually this is something that pupils feel really strongly about, especially in schools with a high percentage of free school meal population. And then perhaps like the most obvious one is that teachers need to feel confident putting primary age pupils in the driving seat and taking on a partnership role with them. But this is really quite unfamiliar sometimes for both parties. And we need to build up the skills that teachers have around youth-led facilitation and confidence in putting pupils in a youth-led position. So I'm conscious that I don't have much time today, but if you could just skip on to the next slide, Becca. What we have included in the Citizens of Now report is lots of information and guidance that comes from practical learning from the project from teachers who ran their project in their schools, so that we can hopefully encourage more schools to get involved. These are just some of the active ingredients that we found, so really allowing the pupils to explore the issue in depth, trying to find ways to make it relevant to your school. So if your school has a really amazing youth council, or if youth voice is something that's already running through your school, how can you only enhance that by giving pupils the chance to get involved in youth social action? Linking it into your curriculum again goes back to allowing pupils to explore the issue, but also helping connect up their learning to the real world. Depth to that learning essentially. And some of the things that we can really help is to get to know your community allies, so look to your community and see where you can draw on the assets, and again help children really benefit from themselves but understand that there's a benefit to the community for their actions as well. So you'll find lots of practical guidance in the report, and I couldn't possibly cover it all today because it's a 50-page report and I only had 5 minutes, but hopefully this has given you a little taster, and I think Becca is going to drop a link to the report in the chat for you. But the best way I think I could round off my section is really to leave you with the words of one of the pupils who took part in the project, because I think actually they can sum up best why it's so important to deliver this work in the primary phase. So the final slide, please, Becca. And that's me. I think that's my 5 minutes, which I was really worried I was going to overrun by.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was really interesting, and I really like that idea of kind of thinking about kids as actual citizens in their communities. Really interesting. Hopefully some questions, kind of get back to some more details shortly. So thank you very much. That was Hannah Breeze, and now I'm going to pass on over to Ayan Abdi, who is the Director of Enrichment at Mulberry School for Girls. Ayan, if you just
Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to be talking about fostering youth-led action with a particular focus at Mulberry School for Girls. We are a part of the Mulberry Schools Trust. Can I have the next slide? So firstly, I want to really showcase the incredible work our girls have already done. So our history of student-led social action projects has been running for years and years and years, and one of our most phenomenal is our annual youth conference. This year marked the 20th anniversary of youth activism. This was launched after 9/11 as our students were concerned over a very divided world and the rise of Islamophobia. And our students came together to create a conference that explores issues that really concern them, highlight what their needs are. They organised the event from choosing keynote speakers to leading the discussion groups themselves. And one of the things I really want to highlight is make sure whatever the students do, there is a long-term impact. And that's one of the ways we've been able to get such an amazing buy-in from our young students. So the long-term impact became having the annual youth conferences established, and it's tailored to the issues that matter to our young people, designed and created by them. We then move on to the food and care service, which is a reaction for the pandemic's impact on low-income households. Again, our students came forward to support in any way possible, because when it comes to the school itself, it's a community in its own world. So they came together to volunteer and support by sorting through the donations and packaging them for the families across Tower Hamlets. Again, the long-term impact is we've now got a team of student volunteers ready to support upon any future lockdowns, and a continued stream of donations of sanitary products that are distributed for free to our young students. And our student volunteers distribute them across the school. Another one we've got, that's the Quality Steering Committee. Again, a response to concerns around racism and prejudice. And our students came together to create a series of high-profile events, from fundraising to celebrating Mother's Language Day to Peace Day, and really showcase the diversity of our school cohort. And again, this is another long-term impact for this, is the students have continued from Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 5 to be a part of the steering committee and continue to create amazing opportunities for the other remaining students to experience the rich tapestry of our school community. So that's just a few highlights. Can we go to the next slide? So what makes Mulberry special? We really put as part of our curriculum design to instill these 4 pillars: confidence, leadership, creativity, and love of learning. This is part of every part of the curriculum, the enrichment package, and the learning we do with families. All of those 4 key areas create an active citizenship, okay? So confidence, we give our students responsibilities from year 7. We've got reception duty, student panels that give students the confidence to work with the visitors, and a range of non-teaching staff. Students are encouraged to take up public speaking programs like Jack Petchey, Model United Nations, and they're engaged with dialogue with a variety of different people. So we build that confidence from the beginning of this journey with us at the school. The second stage of confidence is leadership, making them feel like they can step up and take ownership of events, things that are happening around them. So our young people design our sports days, they design their youth conferences. The year 10 to 13 prefects organize public events, for example, VIP events, for example, the Michelle Obama tour. and as well as parent consultations. Each year, we invite our students to go to the WOW, so that's Women of the World Festival, and they hear from a wide range of inspirational leaders. So we've got confidence, we've built them up slowly, then we've given them leadership opportunities, but creativity is really what allows them to spark and create their own ideas, start to implement their own social changes. So we push them to continue to take art up to GCSE, as we truly believe that self-expression and performance will give our students the ability to take more risks and find their own voice. And we give them that responsibility from year 9 where they actually deliver and create their own art project. And we also give them the opportunity to take part in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And the last bit, love of learning, this is where parents come in helpful. So we ensure that our young people are what they do family workshops with their parents in the school. So parents are also involved with this sort of environment. Students have access to lunchtime and after school clubs to develop their own interests, and all our clubs are dropping, giving our girls as many different experiences, as many different externals that they can work with and learn from. Can I have the next slide, please? So our approach, instill those school values early on. So that's a part of the curriculum, part of the enrichment package, and that will give our students the confidence to lead their own project. From there, you'll get more students coming forward. So listen to the student voice, allow students the platform to communicate directly with proactive leaders within the school. And then from there, you then go towards the collaborative response. So students and staff work together and respond to that challenge. Students gain valuable experience and toolkit for future activism, and then take action, respond to that issue and make it a long-term program and instill that within the school ethos. So some of our biggest programs go straight onto the school calendar, which then becomes a part of the school provision. Our students know that every year they'll be part of the youth conference. Every year we've got the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Every year they have the Year 9 project. All this is a part of their every single day. So they have that exposure very early on. So next slide, please. So my tips for schools to support student-led action. Firstly, amplify the voice of current student leadership positions. Give your student councils a project and guide them towards real solutions. Number 2, highlight the impact of young people. For example, Greta Thunberg and Malala to the modern world. Number 3, give students ownership of planning and organizing events that matter to them. Number 4, build their confidence from public speaking opportunities to having responsibilities around the school. 5, introduce them to a wide range of leaders. 6, encourage them to find their voice using creativity as a tool, art, music, dance, and drama. This will push them out of their comfort zone. 7,
I'm so sorry to,
That's
I'm gonna have
fine.
to just cut you off there, even though it's so interesting and I would love for you to finish the top tips. I mean, I'm sure we can
I
figure out a way
understand.
to.
I'm happy for this to be shared with any of the people who've come today. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
That was brilliant, really interesting,
Thank
and
you.
really nice to hear from a campaign with such kind of strong history. Yes, thank you. So thank you, that's Ian Abdi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yes, after that, I'm now just gonna pass over to Hannah Cohen, head of programs at Bite Back 2030.
Hi everyone. I feel terrible cutting Ian off because I personally was taking so much, and that's incredible to hear of a school that's doing quite so much. I'm flying solo without slides today, so you're gonna have to look at me, I'm afraid, for 5 minutes instead. But I thought actually it felt like such a short time frame that I thought maybe I'd just tell you a little bit about myself, about Bite Back, about our program, and then I'm happy to share lots of stuff on slides after the event if anyone would like to know more. So like I say, I'm Hannah, I'm from Bite Back 2030. We are a youth-led movement fighting for a healthier, fairer food system. So we know that what's around us shapes us, and so what we're doing is campaigning for healthier streets, healthier screens and healthier schools, and we're making sure that child health really stays sort of top of the agenda with policymakers, because all young people have the right to be healthy no matter where they live. So Bite Back launched 2 years ago, and we have been steadily building our army of young activists who are leading social action largely through campaigning. We have a national youth board who are doing sort of top-down policy change. We have local youth boards across the country who are leading local level change with local authorities and combined authorities. And then we have a much broader movement of young people that we call our champions, who are leading grassroots activism to improve the food system and the food environment in their very specific localities. So today I'm going to mostly talk about our School Food Champions programme. So School Food Champions is I Will funded, so we're kind of delighted to be here today with both hats on. Bite Back are a Fair Education Alliance member, we're also an I Will match funder. So actually there are loads of familiar faces and organisations on the call, so apologies to those of you that we know well who have probably heard me say all this 100 times before, but pleased to bring it to some new people as well. So yeah, we received some funding from the iWell Fund a couple of years ago to deliver 2 cohorts of a programme called School Food Champions. It's basically a fantastic way to get young people campaigning to improve an element of their school food. So that could be through increasing the flow of healthier options in their canteens. It might be about making the dining room experience more positive, which will hopefully lead to greater uptake of school meals. So more young people are eating a good, nutritious meal during the school day. It's also about things like ensuring transparency and pricing, so that young people in receipt of free school meals are receiving the full allowance that they're entitled to, and ensuring that they can spend it all on great food. You know, it's all about fairness and equality, like so many of the other organisations across the FEA. The School Food Champions is an extracurricular programme. It's delegated delivery. So we train up a lead teacher in each school who delivers it as a weekly after school club. They recruit a team of 10 to 15 young people in Key Stage 3. So the programme is for years 7 to 9. It's a really interesting age group when it comes to thinking about food and health, because suddenly when you start secondary school at 11, you've got complete autonomy over what you choose to eat at lunchtime and what you might buy to eat on the way to and from school, which you didn't have at primary school. So it's a really interesting age group to kind of capture their attention and get them thinking about the food system and the tricks that it plays along the way. So they go on a journey to kind of uncover the way the food system affects them. They audit their current school food, and that includes meeting decision makers like the head teacher, catering managers, business managers. They go out and survey their peers, and then they plan a youth-led social action campaign to make positive changes around the school food in their school. So some examples, this year we're running in about 50 schools with about 500 young people. Some examples of some kind of brilliant social action that we've seen from our young people since September. We've had schools that have campaigned to remove sugary drinks from campus, encourage the schools to go water only. We've got schools that have been designing healthier snack options and working with their caterers to have them put on the menu. Schools that have campaigned for longer lunch breaks, improving queuing systems, rearranging the canteen to put healthier options in the spotlight. We're seeing some really lovely and really kind of individual campaigns that are sort of driven by the local context of that school and what's particularly happening in those places. We're learning a lot from delivery. Like we said, we started delivering in September. We're in about 50 schools this year. We've actually got recruitment open right now for cohort 2, who will start delivering from September. And we're hoping to work with another 100 schools from September. So at the moment, we're spending a lot of time kind of thinking about the lessons we've learned from cohort 1 and thinking what we might want to tweak and adapt for cohort 2. So some of those lessons, we've learned that actually the language of campaigning and activism was actually quite tricky with head teachers initially, especially when it's to do with campaigning to do with their own school. You know what I mean? They were quite happy in terms of activism about things going on beyond their gates, but when it comes to talking about things happening in their own school, that activism language, I think they were thinking we were going to be encouraging revolutions and sit-ins in the canteen. And so we've taken quite a lot of time we've softened our language a bit. We talk about social action projects rather than campaigns. We've really tried to spend time building relationships to show that we're keen to kind of work together to facilitate positive change. I think also that also comes down to the fact that you really need, with the school community, to make change within a school, to take that really holistic approach and think about how you can involve the whole school community and take people on a journey with you to make sure that social action is going to be successful. So for our pupils, we didn't want it to be pupils versus the canteen staff at all. It's, you know, how can the whole school community work together? And also we didn't want the pupils to be suggesting changes that other pupils don't agree with, you know, so people have to feel like they're being taken on the journey with you. Schools are really complex places, and for change to be embedded, there's lots of different factors in play. So getting the young people who are kind of leading the social action to really understand that school community and all the players involved is really important. They need to know about the infrastructure, so they're set up for success ultimately. So as an example, we had one team of young people who had this amazing campaign. They wanted to bring in new water fountains, and they planned out exactly where they wanted to be. And then they met with the school business manager, who told them, well, that's great, but there's no plumbing there. It would cost umpteen thousand to dig up the school. To, you know, just trying to make them think about the practicalities of making change in their school and setting them up for success, letting them understand how school budgets are working, you know, so that they can, not suggesting changes 2 weeks after budgets have been signed off for the year. So really just thinking about some of those kind of practical issues in a school they need to think about. Making sure that doors are open to decision makers. I mean, this is something that the other speakers have already spoken about, but it's the role of responsible adults to kind of set those young people up for success and make sure that their ideas are going to be listened to and taken seriously. Like, think about the steps you can take as a person facilitating social action to pave the way for success for them. And then something we're thinking about a lot at the moment is thinking about how we can kind of ensure that social action is celebrated across the community of the beyond young people that are deliberately involved. I'm done, Daniel, 1 second.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Celebrate across the community beyond those involved. So assemblies, websites, newsletters, notice boards, just making sure you're making a big splash about it, basically. Yeah, I'm happy to tell people much more. I'll drop my email in the chat for anyone that wants to chat.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm so sorry to have to cut people off. Of course, it's so interesting. We just want to make sure we've got that time for kind of questions and we can move between the speakers and get a bit more detail. So sorry, but that was, yeah, really interesting and brilliant to hear about. I mean, the interesting idea, kind of giving young people the survey skills as well that are crucial to social action kind of later down the line as well, continuing moving forward. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, Hannah. I'm going to hand over to Isaac Jones now, Head of Programs at First Give.
Hi, Dan. Hi, everybody. There's lots of familiar faces in the room, which Hannah's already said was the case for her as well. But for those who don't know, my name's Isaac. I'm Head of Programs at First Give. As you know, we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm really going to focus on how we work with schools and maybe pick out a few little bits of things that we've learnt over the time that we've been running. We're about 7 or 8 years old, although it doesn't feel like it because the pandemic stole a few years from us. But the programme that we deliver is in partnership with secondary schools across England and Wales, and the programme is designed to empower and inspire young people to make meaningful change in their community through social action projects. What we do is we provide schools with a really clearly structured and fully resourced scheme of work that links to a number of different curriculum areas, and schools deliver that to full year groups in the context of their actual curriculum time. So a whole year group will participate each year, and over the course of a 5-year period, the aim is that all students will have experienced the First Give programme as a sort of rite of passage through that school experience that they've had. Can I get the next slide, please? So it is effectively a competition, First Give programme, between the forms or classes in the year group. And on top of the social action that the students carry out, we make a grant of £1,000 to a charity that the winning class have connected with through the programme. So you can see through this photo that the final is a celebration for the whole year group and the impact that they've had through their social action. So that £1,000 is sort of a bonus as on the top of the things that they've actually achieved through the programme. Next slide. So this just to give you an idea of the resources that we provide to schools. So when I say it's a fully resourced programme, we have an online teacher hub, which is where teachers are able to access 8 full lesson plans. There is a course book, hard copy course book that the students use throughout the programme. There's PowerPoint presentations, and everything is really closely aligned so teachers can just pick it up and deliver it really easily. But we deliver training at the beginning of the programme as well, so that teachers feel really confident about what it is that they're going to be doing. And there's also sort of briefing videos for each lesson. So hopefully teachers find it really easy to use. That's the feedback that we generally get. And I think, you know, harking back to what Hannah was saying about the RSA's research, that teachers need to be supported, that's certainly been true in our experience. Next slide, please. So this is the structure of the programme, just to take you through how it actually works. As I mentioned, we do that teacher briefing session at the beginning, and we go in and launch the programme with an assembly to the full year group. One of our freelance facilitators does that, just to get the students excited, understanding exactly what that journey is they're about to go on, how it's going to work. For the first half of the programme, those first 4 lessons are really focused on understanding social issues and carrying out the social action. They'll research local charities that tackle issues that matter to them, contact those charities, learn more and find out how they can help. And then they plan social action projects, and that might be social action in the form of fundraising, it might be awareness raising, in some cases it's campaigning as well. So we see a real range of different kinds of social action that students participate in. And in the second half, they develop advocacy and presentation skills, working in groups to create presentations in which they advocate for their class's charity and report on the social action that they've done and the impact that they have had. And then one group is chosen from each class to attend the final as a presenting group, and there'll be a panel of judges at that final which includes student judges. That's really important for us, that young people, perhaps participants from the year before, sometimes head students as well, or members of the student council, are involved in the decision making about where that grant gets allocated as well. So yeah, it's a really structured, supported and fully resourced program. We have a program manager that works with about 40 to 50 schools each, and they will be that point of contact for the lead teacher at the school, offering all the support that we can and guidance, and sharing the learning across the schools that we're working with. But I think, you know, we just think it's a really powerful way of helping schools to provide a meaningful platform for young people's voices that doesn't feel too scary. And some of those things Hannah Cohen was saying there about the nervousness about the idea of campaigning or activism compared to the language of social action. It's sort of an easy way to ease them into potentially encouraging young people to use their voices more prominently. But lots of our learning is really similar to the RSA's Citizens of Now report, the importance of supporting teachers, of developing SLT buy-in, of emphasising the agency of young people in terms of the choice of social issues, and also the social action projects that they carry out. I'm going to ask you to skip the next slide and go to the final one, if that's okay, Becca. So we are also in the process now of doing a couple of pilots this summer. They're very early stages. They are very much pilots and not something that we're definitely going to launch on a more wide scale. But the First Give Primary programme, we're piloting with 4 primary schools this summer. We've taken a lot of the learning from the RSA's Citizens of Now report. And then we're also looking at this First Give Step Up programme, which will primarily help us to look at the longer term impact of the core programme by doing some research, going back into the schools that we've worked with, working with that year group again, delivering an assembly, collecting some data from those students, and also setting up a smaller sort of extracurricular group social action project that students can then take part in. So as I say, both of those at very pilot stage, but when I was talking to Becca about this presentation, she mentioned that it would be good to just bring those up as well. Lots to try and squeeze into the 5 minutes, but I think that's everything that I wanted to cover, and I'm really happy to have further conversations, and also looking forward to the questions that come up in the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to really see some commonality, a lot of commonality about kind of carrying out their own research, enabling young people to express agency as citizens in their own community, kind of counteracting the nervousness and expressing that. So yes, I see we're getting a few questions through. Just keep them coming through in the chat. We can come back to a lot of these themes at the end. And so with that, bearing that in mind, I'll move on to our next speaker, Florence Clark-Drayson, who is an Association of Colleges Youth Social Action Apprentice and is based at Leeds City College. Florence, over to you.
Hello, thanks Dan. Hello everyone, I'm Florence. I've been working as a Youth Social Action Apprentice within FE, which is a new role to all the colleges. Can I have the next slide, please? So for my apprenticeship, I work across 4 places, 3 of them are FE. First, at Leeds City College, I work with the enrichment team. We've been working at a new campus, so there's been a new system and new students. So we've been working on trying to engage students. When I started, students didn't know what social action was. Mostly, I think that was due to the pandemic. And most staff were not totally aware either. I've had success so far as I've had regular sessions, students engaged in social action, and students approaching us with ideas. I engaged 140 students in social action there last term. At Harrogate, it's a similar situation. Students didn't know much about social action, but now I have students that turn up regularly to volunteering opportunities, and the principal of the college wants to make social action a mandatory part of all courses. Also at Leeds College of Building, social action is a completely brand new concept to the college. And at first, students were very, very reluctant, but through having conversations and explaining the benefits, I now get students showing interest in every opportunity that I advertise. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be talking about my lessons learned whilst delivering social action in many institutions. I have assumptions that have changed since starting. There are elements that I've established that all social action needs in order to make it effective. And also I have found that social action can look very different, and that is okay. Next slide, please. So my assumptions that have changed. These have changed through experience, which has impacted my practice and how I work through social action, which I will explain later. The first one, I assumed that staff and students in FE would know about social action, but students and most staff are not aware of the concept or what's involved. So I've had to change my communication so that the concept and the expectation of it is clear. Number two, the assumption that students have knowledge about projects and events, and so they can be left to work on them independently, but this is not the case, and students often need more support with the project. They might need guidance through the planning and delivery. They might need more things outlining or worksheets in some instances. And I found it's okay for it not to be 100% student-led. It's very dependent on the students and how much support they might need. And it's just about making it accessible. Also, I thought students would know the benefits of social action, but I have had to sell it to students and get them to understand why they should be taking part, and also really highlight the things that have gone well and the skills they have learned, as they can't always infer these themselves. Next slide, please. So all social action projects look different, but I have found certain elements that are needed to be in all sessions and projects for them to go well. So an introduction, as I mentioned, students don't always know what social action is, so that needs to be explained, and they need to see what type of things can be done, type examples. A goal and purpose. Students need to see what the goal and purpose is. This helps them to do their tasks and gives them motivation to take part. A structure. Students often cannot do the projects independently and will need a structure for planning and delivery. The amount will differ depending on the students. Something to deliver. Social action, you need to deliver something that is going to make a difference. Reward evidence. Students should be able to see the difference they make. It should be recognised and shown to them. And performing reflection with students. They don't always realise what they have achieved, so students can learn a lot from reflection. It's helpful to discuss what skills they learned and what did or didn't go well. Next slide, please. An important lesson I've found from working across so many places is that social action can look very different, and that it's okay for it to look different. It's shaped by many things like student level of learning, previous experience, and the type of project they're doing. But it's all about knowing the students and doing trial and error to see what works and what doesn't. Not every element needs to be student-led. It's okay to provide students with a project and have them have their say on how it goes, not them plan it from start to finish. The amount will differ depending on the projects and the students. And when trialing, it's best to start off giving more freedom and then adding support where you see it's needed. Next slide. It's just a thank you slide. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Florence. That was so interesting, and I'm really hoping we can kind of dive straight into some questions here and keep the debate going, discussion going. So yeah, keep posting them in the chat as you have them. I'll start off with a question for, actually, I'm sorry, I should also just say thank you to all the speakers. That was brilliant to have you, really interesting. And yeah, I'm just obviously excited to hear you answer some of these questions. So we've got the first one is for Ian, and it's from Becky Gittins from Smart School Councils. And the question is, how do you keep this going through different generations of students with different experiences and focuses?
Okay, what we normally do is we give the leadership positions to the older year groups. So for example, the sixth formers will have a bigger role in being the chairperson, organising the steering committee meetings, and the younger students will basically work closely with the older students and engage and get that social activism experience from them. But there'll always be a member of staff to support and guide with the project outline. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, That's great, thank you.
So it's more or less working hand in hand, so they learn from one another.
Thank you very much for that. I'll go on to the next one, which is for Hannah Breeze, and that's from Becca at the FEA. Essentially, what's next with the research? This question.
Yeah, so I think as a team, we've been thinking a lot about this recently. And one of the things that really came through for us was that when we planned the project, we very much thought about the benefits to pupils, and we thought about teachers as playing a facilitation role. But actually, one of the things that perhaps we needed to think a little bit more about is how it's experienced for teachers, that they're not just facilitators for young people's experience of youth social action, they're stakeholders in this. And I'd love to connect Ian afterwards about kind of how it shapes teachers within the school, their practice, their personal kind of benefits from being involved in this as well, to really kind of understand like potentially a third benefit to social action. I think we're quite confident talking about social action in the sense of having a double benefit. There's benefits to the pupils and there's benefits to the community, but how can a whole school, the adults in that school really benefit from being involved in that as well. So I think that's very much where our head is at and where we'd like to go next.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you. And next, I'm going to go for one for all the speakers. Florence, potentially, you may want to kind of weigh in this as well, as you did sort of say that due to the pandemic, a lot of young people you're working with don't necessarily have a grip on the kind of social action language. But for everyone, the question is, do panelists find schools are familiar with the language of social action? It would be interesting to know where teachers are sometimes starting from. What do they compare these sorts of projects with, or is it totally new to them that they don't have a comparison? And that's from Heather McDade from Universify Education.
I would say that in FE, it's if you mention NCS, is often a thing that people have heard of with social action, and things like enterprise. That's the kind of thing you relate it to, just like project building. But if I just use the I will definition, and it kind of gets the message across to people, really.
I was just going to say that actually those I will definitions are really helpful as well. So we found kind of mid-year that I think teachers were perhaps banding the phrase social action around but didn't necessarily know what they meant by it. And so we actually ended up running kind of an additional webinar that we weren't planning, where we went into those 6 principles of high quality social action and what they meant, and just tried to give them a little bit more of a steer as to what they could do to make that social action as effective as possible. But yeah, there's some fantastic thinking that's been done on what makes high quality social action done by I Will, so it's worth having a look at the resources they have.
If anyone else wants to come in on that, feel free.
I just wanted to add in my side of things. So my department is enrichment. So as part of the enrichment provision, we do global education. So we do a lot of work with other external organizations and local community groups, and we invite them to come to the school and deliver sessions. But a lot of our staff, I wouldn't say would feel as familiar or prepped to have those conversations in social action. So it's maybe about targeting the right members of staff who can support with that delivery.
It's also, or just to come in on that as well, I think one of the things that I found in primary schools was when I started using the language of youth social action or active citizenship, that wasn't as familiar. But when I started saying, like using the example of like a harvest festival, like most primary schools are familiar with what that might be. But one of the things that I found really helpful to advance that conversation was pointing to Dr. Ali Body's work, which looks at how do we get to meaningful youth social action in the primary sector. So I drew on her example where she says that she's interviewed pupils where when they've asked why they're doing the Harvest Festival, they say that they think it's because God is hungry, not because they understand that the reason they're doing it is because food poverty is the issue that they're really focusing on. And when I had that conversation with schools, it got them questioning, well, hang on, yeah, we don't discuss in our school why we do Pudsey Day or why we do Food Festival. And when I started talking about how social action moves beyond just transactional giving then and moves it to a space where children have agency and they understand the context of why they're doing things, that's what makes it meaningful. I found that a really helpful starting point with primary schools, and they really got it after that.
And I'd just jump in and echo that Hannah, as well, like that stuff around really engaging with the issues that are being addressed and really understanding the causes, I think is what makes the social action so much more meaningful for young people. And I think, I mean, it always surprises me every time I hear Hannah talking about the research that she's done, at how similar the learnings that she had at primary level are for secondary as well. I don't think there's masses of difference, to be honest, across the two.
Thank you very much for all of those really interesting answers. And this is another one for kind of all speakers, if anyone wants to jump in on this, from Kevin Franks from Youth Focus Northeast, which is essentially, do you have any examples of how we might be able to better work with local youth services? Anything that comes to mind in terms of, sort of hot points of what organisations can do to work, better with local youth services?
One way we work with local community organisations and youth services is by incorporating into the enrichment offer. So we have enrichment clubs that run at after school and at lunchtime. So it starts to create some sort of familiarity. So the more time we work with a specific organisation, our children become more aware of the organisation and what they do as well.
Brilliant. Anyone else want to come in on that one? If not, we can move on to another question. This one's from Ross McKinley. And the question, sort of on the flip side of that one, was, is there one piece of advice for organisations and schools wanting to deliver youth social action that haven't done much of it so far? And what would this be?
When we're doing projects, often students haven't done it before. And I just start off by asking them, what issues do you care about? And then we vote on it. And then we just say, okay, how are we going to tackle this? And we research ways to tackle it. And it's just as simple as that, really. And then you just plan it and deliver it. And there you go, done.
I think there's something about sharing previous successes to kind of inspire them as well with young people. So showing them what other people have done and the changes that other people have made, and showing them that, it doesn't have to be big, major policy level change, little small actions all add up to big change. So kind of inspiring them through seeing what other people have done, I think, is a really good starting place as well. Things that feel tangible and achievable for them.
Okay, so if no one else has something to kind of add to that, I will. Great. I'll just say thank you so much to all of our panelists. That was fantastic, incredibly interesting, and kind of hoping to see lots of you in the next session. I will hand over briefly if Becca wants to add anything, other than just thank you so much for that really interesting set of presentations.
Thanks, Daniel, and thank you for all your questions. The speakers, they are all in the chat, so hopefully if you see one directed at yourself, if you're able to answer any of them, that would be really fantastic. And I'll make sure when we're sharing back, we have the recordings for these. Some of the panelists have offered to share their slides, and we'll take notes, and we will try and capture the answers to those questions that are written in the chat as well as we go. So do keep putting the questions in, and we can send them to the speakers afterwards as well. Thank you so much as well to Daniel for chairing that session. That was great. We are going to take a quick break now and come back and restart the next session just past 4 o'clock. So if anyone needs to run and grab a drink or anything, and we'll be trying, there's a few people that are struggling to get in the Zoom. So we're going to try and figure out what is going on there. So if you've got any colleagues that are struggling to get on, do drop me a message and I will try and help get them on during the break. But otherwise, we will see everybody back in just a couple of minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Becca, and all the panelists, and Dan for that last session. And hopefully we have resolved some of the issues of people not being able to join. So welcome to the second session of this afternoon. We're really focusing around how do we make youth social action inclusive for all young people in and around education settings. So I think, Sam, you might have raised a question around this, so very well raised, and it will feed into this next session this afternoon. For those who have been here since 3 o'clock, I think you'll agree it was a really exciting, interesting session before, really showcasing youth social action in all sorts of different educational settings, primary, secondary, further education, and some top tips. So thank you so much. For those who are joining, super pleased to have you here today for this second session on youth social action in education. I am Helen Wyman. I head up the I Will Fund at the National Austria Community Fund. And we at the I Will Fund have been really pleased to work with Becca and Siwan and the team at the Fair Education Alliance and the I Will Education Group to convene today. For those who don't know, very quickly, the I Will Fund is a joint fund between the National Lottery Community Fund and the Department of Digital Culture, Media, Sport, and 30 funders, many of whom are on the call today, to embed youth social action across England in a variety of settings, but we do a lot within education settings. And the Fair Education Alliance is a coalition of 250 member organisations working collectively to ensure that no child's success is limited by their socioeconomic background. This next hour is thinking around how do we make sure that we're embedding inclusive practices for youth social action within and around educational settings. So I am going to share my screen when I do that, just with a couple of slides. This next hour will not be lots of me talking. We're going to have 3 panel speakers talking around how they have embedded inclusive practices within youth social action. And then we're going to go into some breakout sessions so you can reflect on what we've heard in the first session, what you know through your own practices, to really think around how we do this together. So the inclusive practices, what we're really talking around there is that we want all young people to undertake and benefit from youth social action. So how do we make sure that there's access to youth social action opportunities, that young people are being engaged and taking up those opportunities, that they're benefiting from what those opportunities are, and that they're also being valued, and their feedback and perception and participation is valued, and they're feeling that reflection. As I said, we will be shortly hearing from a broad number of different programmes. So we've got Ollie and Savannah, who are going to be talking first from Team London and Volunteering Matters about their work in SEND and alternative provision and how they've worked and what they've learnt around youth social action within those settings. We're then going to hear from Sarah from Ormiston Academy Trust, who have taken a year approach, so all of year 8, and take youth social action as part of their work. And what have they learned about undertaking this full year approach, and how do you make sure that that is still inclusive and youth-led in the right way? And then we're going to hear from Jo from Envision, who've been on a journey to broaden their engagement and really to work with young people and engage young people who haven't previously been undertaking youth social action. So engaging in those 3 different ways. So really excited to hear from them. Once we've heard from them all, we will be going into breakout rooms to really think around how do we answer this question together. So keep this question in the back of your mind of how do we best embed inclusive practices within and around education settings. What works well, what works less well, and what do you want to see more of? So some nice questions, and then we'll come back as a group and see what we've heard within that. So really pleased to be here, and I am going to hand over, if I can, to Ollie and Savannah, who will talk through their programme.
Hi everyone, my name is Ollie and I work within the Youth Social Action and Civil Society team underneath the Mayor of London, and we at the GLA have been supporting youth social action in schools since 2013, and pupil referral units, alternative provision and SEND have played a growing part in that. But in 2020 we decided to launch a very distinct and specialised programme working particularly in alternative provision and SEND, which is an enhanced version of our Young Ambassadors programme. That is delivered by Volunteering Matters, and so I'm very pleased to have Savannah here, who will be able to add some flesh to what we're talking about in terms of how the programme has looked and felt within those settings. one thing to say at the beginning is I am going to be talking in very sweeping statements. Lots of you who understand these settings and understand the young people in them will know that they're very, very individual and kind of distinct from each other. So, but what we've tried to do over the next 5 minutes is draw out some of the general themes that we've seen across alternative settings, and then also in particular within alternative provision, and then within SEND. Next slide, please. So as I say, we have a program that works in primaries and secondary schools alongside this one. And so where I wanted to start was talk about some of the prevailing things that we've seen in differences between the two. The first one I'll actually start with is the second bullet, foolish old me, is that wants to kind of appreciate young people's kind of the cup of resilience that they have to them, and how much they can and want to be spent at school. So we therefore find young people are particularly kind of find it particularly challenging to engage in very long sessions. They've got a lot going on, and that resilience to kind of focus on something which can be quite abstract at times is quite challenging. As a result, kind of we found that kind of the most successful is running in-person programs. We've had some really nice successes in primary and secondary schools over the last 2 years running virtual workshops, but they have not flown in these alternative settings. Group size is particularly notable in terms of its distinction, how much smaller the groups are that we work with in these settings. And then kind of the level of personalisation in terms of what and in describing and talking about youth social action has been quite important. So young people have been less willing to engage in some of those conceptual and thematic issues like advocating for climate change, and are much more responsive to things that relate to them. So like kind of building their personalised understanding of what youth social action means in their communities. All of this takes loads of resource, and so kind of we invest a lot of funding per person, which allows for that time and attention to do all the above, and kind of we definitely think it's worth it. So I'll jump into some of those specifics then. So next slide, please. Also talking at rate a minute and running out of time. And so kind of for SEND, kind of again, the level of resilience and level of personalisation needed is incredibly dependent on the needs within the school and the needs of the young people. Group sizes are usually like within 15 young people, and then the prominent issues that have come up are homelessness, environment and climate change, and poverty. And those issues are generally a bit broader, where sensitive topics kind of have to be talked about in the abstract in order to avoid kind of particularly young people taking to literally particularly harmful situations. Savannah, do you have anything to say about kind of some of our work in SEND?
Yes, I do. So one of my colleagues actually was working with a special needs school, and most of the class was non-verbal, so we had to adapt the program. And in one of the sessions, we gave the young people cameras, and we asked them to talk about the things that they disliked and liked in the school environment. And from the pictures, we were able to formulate a project around that, because we were able to look at their concerns and actually understand where they were coming from. So it's really important.
Great, thanks. And next slide, please. Apologies for the background noise. I'm in an office, which is a bit weird. So what we've learned from alternative provision, different from SEND, is that group sizes are, again, much smaller, kind of to minimise kind of the level of distraction and the level of resilience. The issues are usually a bit different, and they are usually focused around things that young people have direct experience of. They are much more ready to talk about things that have directly affected them and they want to address, which does mean that some of those conversations need to be scaffolded really carefully. Savannah, have you got any examples of that?
So we see a lot of that, like we see a lot of that in alternative provision. For example, I was working with Haringey Partnership School, and their project was all around the hashtag they created, which was #MeanAP. And they wanted to host podcasts and an event to inform the public and educators about their experiences in alternative provisions. And they really wanted to combat the negative stereotypes and stigmas that is associated with being placed in AP. So yeah, they really want to have their personal experiences shown.
And that kind of leads me on to talk about some of the quotes that you've seen alongside here. Some of the impacts that we've seen and some of the value that young people have gotten out of the programme revolve a lot around youth voice. They really appreciate having their voices listened to. They've really appreciated feeling part of a wider kind of community of people leading change. And so we've really, really enjoyed some of those impacts. I think that's my 5 minutes.
That is perfect. Thank you, Ollie and Savannah. Super interesting to hear in the different types of provision and what we've learned in terms of making that practice inclusive. I'm going to hand over now to Sarah from Ormiston Academy Trust, who's going to talk through what they've learned in terms of embedding youth social action across a year curriculum.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me to be part of today's session. So in my role as the Enrichment and Social Action Team for O, I've got first-hand experience of the engagement of the youth social action across the Trust and the successes and barriers linked to our projects. So I hope you find this quite informative. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on our school. So Ormiston Academy Trust is one of the largest not-for-profit multi-academy trusts in England, and our aim as a charity alongside our schools is to help provide local children with a great education. So we educate over 30,000 pupils across 5 OAT regions in 40 different schools. We have 32 secondary schools, 6 primary schools, 4 alternative provision schools and 1 special. So we're one of the longest established trusts that have been sponsoring academies since 2009, and our mission is to become a trust that makes the biggest difference both inside and outside the classroom. So as a trust, we're all about championing our pupils and including those from disadvantaged backgrounds and those with special educational needs. Back in January 2019, our Board of Trustees agreed a 5-year strategy for O, and this strategy was to set out our missions, values and core purposes and our priorities for change, and the mission was to become the trust that made the biggest difference. So we set up our values as a values-led organisation, and our aim is that we continually change and challenge ourselves to adhere to the spirit of these values and embed them within our projects. So today I'm here to share with you our youth social action journey and the successes of our delivery so far. So in 2018, the Ormiston Academies embarked on a new social action journey within our academies. It was a trust-wide approach to youth social action, and we received a grant from the National Lottery and the I Will Fund, which was subsequently match funded by our chairman, Peter Murray, and the Ormiston Trust. And the aim of the project was to deliver a series of initiatives which would embed social action into a young person's journey throughout the schools over the first 3-year project. So this project had a huge impact on our pupils, and the successes of the project has led to further trust-wide projects which continue to embed this social action within our academies. So the combined project initiatives and the funding provide the Trust with the opportunity to lead whole school projects which are funded and support students from all backgrounds and educational needs. And these projects are led by a team of specialist lead practitioners and partnerships which promote the inclusivity engagement of all our pupils, staff and everyone that's involved in each stage of the project. So there's lots of support for everyone involved. So some examples of how we make our projects inclusive of a trust is our vision for the whole school approach and the creation of the informative and engaging resources that are embedded throughout the project and support the delivery as well. So where certain proposed activities for some of our pupils might seem out of reach, or for some pupils we may be considered that things are too expensive or a little bit too challenging, we've designed the project delivery to be inspiring, inclusive and personalised to each academy, along with a dedicated team who take a personal approach to every one of our academies and the individual challenges that they face. So some of the examples of how we encourage engagement is we provide the opportunity for all Year 9 pupils to achieve the bronze level DV award, which for some schools and pupils may seem unachievable financially or physically, but our programmes are adapted and funded to suit our schools. Student voice and character education has played a huge part in our trust meeting the needs of every individual. We have yearly elections, which every pupil is given the opportunity to campaign for a place on the regional and national student voice. And these elections take place nationally in every one of our academies on the same day to promote democracy and British values. And representatives are elected from all 43 of our academies by the students, and they work collectively to share the voice of every pupil within their academy. So most recently, our student voice representatives were the driving force for a nationwide youth social action campaign, the Ormiston Humanitarian Fundraiser, which raised over £11,000 to support the people of Ukraine. So we were really proud how the students came together and really got to demonstrate that youth social action. So one of our biggest developments in the youth social action this year is the introduction of the We Will project to our academies. So after another successful bid from National Lottery and a 1-year approach for the youth social action project, Our aim is now to do a bigger and bolder engagement for the whole year groups in both the secondary and primary schools within Oat, but with an opportunity for also non-Oat schools to participate and engage in transitional events linked to youth social action. So the year 4s and the year 8s will complete will collaboratively work together. They'll complete baseline assessments, 25 hours of youth social action, and will be encouraged to develop leadership skills and make connections with the wider community through fundraising and campaigning within their schools. They'll record and reflect their successes throughout the project, which will then be able to measure the barriers that they may have faced personally and as a school, as a group, and then look at their achievements and celebrate their achievements at the end. So the way it works in the academies, they choose from 8 projects that have been specifically created based upon youth social action current situations that are happening, and there's a team on hand to customize each of the projects to suit the demographics and the needs of each academy. And the project is fully funded for the pupils and the staff involved, and they've been created to align with the national curriculum expectations, as well as specifically helping schools fulfill aspects of personal development for Ofsted criteria and character development. So a resource suite and scheme of learning is provided to support the cross-curriculum delivery, as well as CPD and staff support. I know others have mentioned that need is so important to get the staff, the SLT, and everybody on board with understanding what youth social action is. So finally, one of our key elements is measuring the success and the engagement of the project, and it's our detailed participation agreement and tracking of the engagement of the pupils, which is key in seeing the success of this project. So Oat use a compulsory tracking system which allows individual schools to track their engagement of the pupils in the projects, like We Will, but also enrichment activities and extra curriculum activities. And each pupil can be tracked based on a different criteria, for example, SEND or pupil premium. And these results are shared on a national level to our central office, and the data is analysed for success. And then our team of enrichment coordinators and lead practitioners are responsible for tracking this data on a termly basis, and then we identify the barriers and implement ways of supporting and making these projects more inclusive for every individual pupil, not just the schools. So this enables us to ensure that the aim of the project and the vision of the trust are all met. And the success of the We Will project and the I Will project and how it's developed has had a huge impact. And as a trust, we are seeing that our students are understanding what youth social action is. It's embedded into their everyday life, and it's something that they recognise that they're achieving and that they're proud of. And I think, look, just kind of supporting what everyone else has said today, that whole idea of reflecting, getting the staff on board, students having their voice, their opinion, and having that support behind has really worked for us as a trust, and it's something that we're really proud of. And moving forward with We Will, it's going to develop into a huge project. So thank you for listening today.
Thank you, Sarah. So great to hear. And I really like that piece around inspiring as well. And interesting to hear how, although it's across the curriculum, how different schools can approach that or be looking at how they make that inclusive. I am very swiftly going to move on to our last, but by no means least, speaker, which is Jo from Envision. If I can share my screen again, and we'll hand over to you, Jo.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, I'm very conscious of how quickly those 5 minutes go, so I'm going to just jump straight into it. So yes, I am Jo Clark. I'm the head of programs and impact at Envision, and we're a UK-based charity that empowers young people from less advantaged backgrounds to develop essential skills and confidence through using social action as a vehicle to get them interested in issues that affect their local community. We also partner our schools with local businesses and provide and facilitate mentors, meaningful employee engagement opportunities and insights into the world of work with mentors through those businesses. Unlike some of the other programs we've heard about today, we don't take a whole year group approach, but we work with smaller groups of pupils in each of our schools, which is a key element of our program and the skills we develop. Each of our teams are made up of about 12 young people, and we'll work with between 2 and 4 teams per school per year. So this obviously means that when we're being inclusive, we have to also be much more selective in our recruitment processes. We cannot support every young person, so we have to really consider carefully who we are best placed to support. This can be quite a difficult process, but it's an incredibly important one, of course, when you're considering inclusivity for programs like ours. And I'm going to give a kind of very whistle-stop tour of the 3-year impact strategy that we rolled out this year that outlines our target population, school criteria, and our new skills framework. As part of the design and creation of this, we held workshops last year with our staff and trustees to establish, again, who should and shouldn't be included in that criteria. And actually, if we go on to the next slide, please, Hannah, thank you. You can see kind of where we landed with our pupils at least. Previously, we have been less rigorous in the past and rigid in the past with who we work with, and we've tried to support everyone because that's kind of what we're here for, and definitely how we work as Envision. We want to be able to support all people who need us, but the difficulties or the challenges then is you can become a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none, and ultimately you can end up, or we felt that we maybe were ending up doing a slight disservice to some of our young people. So we did have to kind of come down and hone in on who exactly we did support. I know this was a slightly uncomfortable process for a lot of our staff who again feel very passionately about supporting everyone, but I feel comfortable with the decisions that we've made, that they fit within our timeframes and our structures for our kinds of program, and means that now we're making the biggest impact as possible. It felt really important that we were really honest and clear with where our strengths and weaknesses lie and who we could support. And obviously when we can't support, we signpost to other organisations and colleagues, many of whom are on this call, who we feel are better placed than us. Don't have time to go into exactly the details of how we came to these decisions, but I'm very happy to chat through the process that we went through in detail with anyone who would like to know more after this call, and I'll pop my email into the chat for that. Finally, I will give a quick overview of where we landed with our essential skills framework, if we can go on to that final slide. So as I mentioned, this was another part of our impact strategy process, was devising this skills framework in collaboration with Skills Builder Partnership. We are a level 3 partner of Skills Builder Partnerships, which means our framework speaks directly to theirs. And you can see on that top line is they have our 4 essential skills of teamwork, communication, determination and creativity, and they speak directly to the 8 skills of Skills Builder, which are underneath. Again, don't have time to go into full detail of how we did this and how we kind of devised the framework and codified our curriculum around it for inclusion, but would be happy to pick this up with peers who would like more detail. But as I mentioned at the beginning, part of our program is we partner our young people with mentors at a local business. So we sort of straddle this youth social action and career readiness world, which means our framework has to reflect that. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's huge crossover in the skills that are essential for employability and those that are necessary to make a real life social change. Essentially, our framework is there to support young people to become civic-minded and positive members of society, and to use their voice for good, which will help them in their academic career, their future working career, but also hopefully just all elements of their adult life as well. So that was a very quick overview of our journey into being an inclusive organisation and having inclusive practices in our programme, and being clear in what we do. But I guess that the main thing that I would say is what we really wanted to do last year when we were putting our frameworks together was consider what we do, who we do it for, and how we will make sure we do it well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jo. And thanks, Ollie, Savannah and Sarah. I know it's not an easy task we've given you, and I'm not as good at Dan as jumping in. So Dan, you're definitely a better chair than I am. For those who were in the first session will agree with me. Thank you so much to kind of just food for thought to think around in that, and the 3 different examples we wanted to show of different ways of having inclusive practices to embed youth social action. I love that piece as well, Jo, your creativity, which harks back to the first session as well, from Mulberry School for Girls. Actually, there was a lot of creativity in there, and I really like that, inspiring young people and thinking around what will inspire them and make the change. And Savannah as well, your point around really seeing through young people's eyes what the changes they want to make in different ways. What we are going to do is we're going to go into some breakout rooms. So we are not going to do a panel session like we did in the first session. If you've got questions, do type them in and we'll try and get the panel to respond to them. But we want to jump into some breakout rooms to really think around that question together of how do we best embed inclusive practices for youth social action within and around education settings. So we will shortly be going into those rooms. We really want you to think around what you've heard from these last 3 sessions, what you heard from the first panel as well, of how do we make sure we are really making youth social action practices in and around education as inclusive as possible. So there will be 3 questions on the Jamboard that you'll be seeing as well, which is what works well, what works less well, and what do you want to see more of? And what we will be doing at the end is collating all of the different Jamboards together to see what we can be doing together as a collective, because huge numbers on the ground, in this call together to do this. We will be sending you into breakout rooms. You've got to take a note of what number breakout room you are and then go to the Jamboard of that slide as well. So hopefully someone will be putting the link to the Jamboard in the chat box shortly. And we're going to hope for the tech gods be smiling on us today. And then we are going to send you in to 10 rooms. So do look out when you get sent into a room, look out or which room you're going into and find the Jamboard on there. If you can't get Jamboard to work, you're going to have to be nice to other people in your breakout room to talk through it and they can type in together. When we come back, we'll be asking for a few volunteers just to say some key takeaways from their group. We won't be able to go around together all groups, but just a few key pieces. And then we will come back together. And then we will be heading into the last session, which is the youth-led social action piece, which is going to be much more exciting than me, but not more exciting than your breakout room discussions. So please do click on the link to the Jamboard, and Becca and so on. I feel like we're going to be magically sent into breakout rooms.
Hi, Hayley and Becky. I think you should be being moved into breakout rooms as we speak. We got lots of people joining us all at 4:30, so which is fab. We're just looking at how do we best embed inclusive practices for youth social action within and around education settings. So you will get pinged across into a breakout room just as you join. Viv, lovely to have you with us as well. Again, you're just getting pinged into a breakout room. They've only just gone in, so you should have the full amount of time.
Welcome back, everybody. We were just in the middle of a discussion, so apologies, I got a bit lost, but hopefully I think we've got everyone back. Also, apologies if you had problems getting onto Jamboard. I think we might have maxed out the number of people in a Jamboard getting access. So hopefully you managed to work around that in groups. In my group, we had really interesting discussions around the different examples that we had of all young people being engaged, and are there challenges around actually only hearing some of the young people and youth voices, and how do you make sure you keep engagement? But then also, if you are targeting, what does that mean for the young people who aren't included in that? And really good examples of actually the creativity coming through, but also being young people identifying the issues that matter to them most. Prioritizing that is a really key way in both scenarios of engaging young people and keeping them engaged in the process. I'm going to see if there's anybody brave enough from any other room to just unmute. This is a very, actually, I'm going to say raise your hand maybe rather than unmute, just to give a very quick update of any comments or key questions that came from their room. Oh, Becky, yeah.
Sorry, I could find the unmute button for a second then. Sorry for the lighting, it's just got really sunny in Chester, so apologies. But I had a really great discussion with Hannah Breeze and Deanne from Co-op and Hayley from Oxford City Youth. And we couldn't get onto the Jamboard, so we just had a discussion about inclusion and how we can include others. And I was talking about Savannah and Ollie's programme, because I helped that programme out, and Savannah's a hero and so's Ollie. But we were talking about the main things to do with inclusion is giving people choice. Like we were talking about whether it's like we use digital tools and maybe giving people timers for those students who are autistic and really struggle with the pressure of time, and like students who feel particularly emotionally vulnerable, having trigger warnings when we do debates and things. And we were talking about how giving choice to everybody is a good thing, whether they are SEND, AP, PP, sorry to use all the acronyms, but the choice is good for everybody. And then we've had Deanne and Hayley talk about space, like maybe taking things, creating a space that's great and makes a student feel comfortable is good. So like Deanne was talking about taking students to the Etihad, so maybe they wouldn't get to go to the football stadium to have their programme take place there. Or when Hayley goes into different rooms and goes into different spaces, she makes it less formal and less like a classroom, so it makes it much easier for students to take part. So I think it's all about choice and space, and Hannah's done some great research. It was nice to hear more about that.
Brilliant. I love that, Becky. And apologies if you can get into the Jamboard. I will put my email address in if you have any thoughts for those teams who couldn't. If you can send it to me and we will consolidate it all. Heather, you've got your hand up as well. Did you want to just give some update?
Yeah, I'm happy to just like super briefly say a few things from our room. So kind of things we said that were really good is making sure that drawing on what we were saying earlier about making sure young people have the scaffolding around them, sort of the support that they need to thrive, and but also making sure that's kind of student-led, so kind of having creative approaches, flexible approaches to recruitment, to participation, because different students will need different things, and kind of having things which were kind of talked was like there's maybe a temptation to like constrain topics, and it's good not to be too abstract because that can be hard to engage with, but actually a broader topic, young people often actually do have really strong feelings about, for example, global issues. So not kind of feeling, adults might feel the need to like want to kind of constrain it or limit it, but actually having space, having time to do that discussion kind of fully. And things we would like to see more of were collaborations, joined up thinking, deeper case studies, and also platforming of more success stories, because there's lots of great ones out there. So we'd love to hear more of them.
Brilliant. Thank you, Heather, and your group. Really, really good. And I think that piece again, yeah, kind of flexibility and understanding the time and resource that it takes to be inclusive in different ways again, great that choice and young people coming up with the priorities that they're facing at the moment is really key to this. And yeah, collaboration is the heart, I think, of what FEA and I Will Fund is all about, working together. So really keen to hear how we keep doing that and share these learnings to really make this shift going forwards together. I wanted to do a bit of a wrap up there. As I've said, if you weren't able to get into the Jamboard, apologies for that. I will put my email address in, and do send through your thoughts so we can make sure they're included. We'll try and pull them into some kind of, I want to say one pager, but that might be a bit tricky, but we'll do our best to really think around how do we continue this process of embedding inclusivity in youth social action. Or Rebecca, I've seen you've got your hand up. Did you want to just come in from your
Sorry,
room?
yeah, one really key thing that just to pick up from our group, what we wanted to see more of was more from SEND schools and organisations, particularly say non-verbal groups, because obviously they're very valid and we want to be able to include them. But also we talked about having more mentors that reflect the communities and the young people that we trying to work with. So very much around that role model of someone like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, really key points. And we see that time and time again around making sure that their mentors are reflective and clear and providing that space. So thank you to you. And if anyone is on the Jamboard, please keep putting your comments in and we'll collate them back in together going forwards. I wanted to say thank you for today's session, for your attendance. Also, huge thank you to Ollie and Savannah, to Sarah and to Joe for talking very quickly through an enormous amount of work and the learnings that they do. As I think, Heather, your point around platforming and showcasing, it's really important to do that. So thank you so much for that. And we will continue to be doing that of how we are doing this and how we're learning together. It's a lot, I think, to think around from the first session into this session. So thank you for being here. I know the next session is the most exciting session, so I'm ready for that excitement. We will continue to be working to collate these, do feedback, thoughts, reflections after the event that you have on this work, and how can we make sure that we are working inclusively so all young people can benefit from youth social action in that. We're going to have a quick break, aren't we? Have I sped through? I've sped through. So there will be a quick break before we go into our next session. I will, as I have rushed people through and then also ask questions, I'm just going to see if there's anyone else who wanted to reflect anything from their rooms quickly. Otherwise, we will have a quick cup of tea and a stretch. I know it's been a couple of hours getting ready for the next session.
If no one else is coming in, just to jump in, when we're going into this break, Olia and Denise, who are the youth co-chairs for the next session, have asked during your break to think of a song that reminds you of a time where you have taken part in social action, and that's going to kick off the next session. So if you're able to stay, we really would love for you to do so. It's going to be a really fantastic session led by the young people. So just keep that in mind of what song reminds you of a time that you've done social action, and just put it in the chat when you have it.
Welcome everyone. I hope you're as excited as I am for this portion of the session. Before I begin, I hope you're all engaging with our warm-up question in the chat. Which song reminds you of a time you took part in social action? So we'll be hosting a showcase of youth social action in education, and there'll be a great chance to discuss how this education sector can best support young people to participate in social action. I'm your co-chair, Denise. I'm 17, so right now I'm in the library revising for my A-levels. And to say social action is important is an understatement. I think it's absolutely imperative that everyone engages in our socio-political system as to have an effective democracy and to represent all members of society. I'm now going to pass on to our co-chair, Olia.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Olia and I'm 17 years old. I'm also currently studying for my A-levels and I'm really passionate about working towards a fairer education system. So my experience in youth social action has been through the Fair Education Alliance's Youth Steering Group, as well as mentoring younger students in school. I'm loving seeing everyone's responses in the chat to songs which remind them of when they took part in social action. There's such a great range of songs, from Dancing in the Streets by Martha Reeves, Godwin by Corey Bello, Bonkers by Dizzy Rascal. Well, it's great to have so many of you here. We're now going to hear from some of our great youth panelists, starting with Turan. We're also going to have a Q&A later on, so please leave any questions you have in the chat.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Turan, and I'm a 14-year-old boy here to talk to you about the social action I completed through First Give. I was really inspired to do social action, as it allowed me to study problems within my borough and fund others in order to help them. Our main aim was to spread awareness about our charity, Keen London, dedicated to providing sporting facilities for free to children with disabilities or additional needs. In order to spread awareness, our team came up with 6 main strategies. The first one was to organise a basketball and football challenge with chocolates as incentives to entice pupils. This action was very popular throughout our school and also allowed us to teach others on the ideas Keen London were trying to fix, while also relating to the overall aim. We also created a presentation which was given to each form group in our school to teach them of the importance of our charity. To further attract attention, we created many different posters and spread them throughout our school to intrigue others to support our problem Keen London was trying to solve. In addition, we wanted to make ourselves abstract and therefore came up with the idea of making a poem revolving around our problem. The poem captivated many people's attention and increased awareness to local problems. From this, we also received funding, adding to the money created by our sports challenge. We then used this to donate to First Give and allowing them to improve the lives of many young children. Finally, we decided the only way to create a larger change and a greater recognition for our charity was to gain attention of an MP. This led us to create a petition which had over 1,000 signatures and was recognised by Barnet's local MP, Teresa Villiers. Throughout my social action, my school has supported me with access to facilities to make my thoughts a reality, whilst also providing me with a team which allowed all of our social action to spread to more people. My advice for any young person doing social action would be to try and be different to anyone else, as that's how you will gain more attention and stand out from the crowd. Also, I would recommend to get as many people as you can involved, as this gives you an opportunity to personally speak about your social action and plans. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Turan. That was really, really inspirational. Our next speakers are from Jacob and Harrison.
Hello everyone, I'm Jacob. I'm a Vice Chair of the Bite Back 2030 Youth Board along with Harrison.
Hi everybody, I'm Harrison. As Jacob said, I'm a Vice Chair of Bite Back. Bite Back is a youth-led organisation focusing in the space of child health. We were started by Jamie Oliver in 2019 or 2018. And our aim is to halve child obesity by 2030, but also provide it so young people can have access all across the country, no matter where they live, no matter of their social class or ethnicity, to access free school meals and healthy foods. Recently we ran campaigns, so a campaign I ran recently was on school food, surrounding school food. So we did a campaign where we took young people from all across the country, and it's called Spill the Beans, and it was basically to get people, well, young people all across the country, as I said, to talk, and we wanted to hear their voice.
One of the campaigns that I ran was called Pack It In, which was all about sports sponsorship. So I met with the English and Wales Cricket Board to discuss their sponsorship of the 100 with KP Snacks. So that was one of the campaigns that I led. But Spill the Beans was something that we were both very proud of and both feel really, really strongly about. Harrison, do you want to say?
Yeah, so Spill the Beans took part of last summer, and we got loads of young people from all across the country to voice their opinions on school foods. And ultimately, this report led to something happened within government, and Jake will explain what happened.
Yeah, so I held multiple panels. Harrison held some panels, and other youth board members Bite Back held panels. We got to actually speak to lots of young people within schools and ask about not only about what the school food was like in their schools, but also about the environments that they were having their lunch in, about activities they could do at lunch, but also about sustainability in lunch. You know, are they using lots of plastic packaging, things like that. In this report, we then took to lots of meetings. We got to meet with people from the school sector and actually speak to them and tell them like our own actual experiences from these panels, hearing what people had to say and through our own experiences from schools as well, which was really, really helpful. It was really great to know. And it was great that the people from the schools that we were speaking to really took what we said on board. And now the government are really cracking down on school food standards, thanks to our report and thanks to you know, us speaking and us getting involved in social action and us actually reaching out and getting involved and really pushing our message and what we wanted to do. And it was really great that people listened to us.
So in schools currently, we run a campaign called School Food Champions. So it's an extracurricular activity based to 11 to 14-year-olds where they do a report of their school and see what they want to change and then create the change within the school. And this is all funded by Bite Back and external funders. And it means we can get young people campaigning from a young age so they can create change in the future.
Thank you so much, Jacob and Harrison, for sharing. It's amazing work that you're doing. We're now going to watch a video from Comfort, who's also in the youth steering group with us.
Hi, last summer I started a project to offer more affordable and more accessible tuition to children from low-income families or children attending state schools. And how it started was I would offer tuition to families and they'd pay for it, and all the profits from that was funneled towards offering free tuition. So in the end, we helped a family that was facing redundancy. We helped a family that had a kid with autism that they weren't really able to find tuition, or they couldn't afford tuition for, especially because kids with special needs, they'll face challenges. So tutors that are able to tackle those challenges, they charge a high price and it just becomes really unaffordable for families. And what I was hoping to achieve was to just help level out the playing fields between private school and state schools and just have a small impact, even if it's just on one family, just help them push forward. And what inspired me to start was really nothing. Like, it was just a spur of the moment thought, because I was tutoring for a long time, and at one point I saw I didn't have the capacity to teach all these families that needed it. So I started asking my friends, oh, do you mind tutoring this family? I'll put you in contact. And then I thought, why not make something more like structured out of this, or make something better? And I just heard a lot of things, and I saw like a lot of these ideas started from Groundworks, and here I am at Groundworks. Why not build an idea out of it? In terms of support from my school or college, it hasn't been too much. A lot of my teachers know about it, but there hasn't been a lot of support. And I think the support I would have wanted was just to help put me in contact with different families, or just building a network that I wouldn't really have at 17 years old attending school, but just put me in contact with the right people, or just giving me more information, just things that I wouldn't know but a school would be able to know, and just offering that information to help, you know, push me in the right direction, especially when I first started finding families. But not only that, we're finding people who wanted to tutor. There was probably people in my year group who would have wanted to tutor, but I just didn't know. So it would have been nice to know all of that, or just have the school help me spread information in that way. And my advice for people is really, it starts from the ground up. You can have a small idea, and even if it helps one person, that is enough. And if it's only donating £5 towards a cause that you believe in, that is something. And social action just starts with literally putting the bricks together and building that house or that wall, whatever the metaphor is. But my point is just that it doesn't have to be a big structured idea where you know exactly what you're doing or where you're trying to go with it. It can start from literally nothing, as long as you have the right spirit and you sort of have an idea of how you want to execute it. and it starts from there. And then make your network and get to know people. That's another big thing, having a good network and having good networking skills, just getting to know people within the field you're interested in. And even like attending this event is a step forward, and this is like definitely the direction you want to go in. And yeah, that's my advice. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, thank you so much to all our youth presenters. I think we can all agree that they were quite inspirational. But now I'm going to take some questions from. So I see that one question is, what made you undertake the project you spoke about, as well as how did you hear about it? So I guess we can start off with Jacob and Harrison. How did you get started with Bite Back?
I'll go first. So I first heard about Bite Back through my school. And when I first heard about it, food's always been kind of a space that I've been quite interested in, whether that's cooking, baking, things like that. And I've always been kind of aware of problems with obesity in the country. And I thought this was just a really amazing opportunity that I wanted to really get involved with. If it sounded like this really big opportunity that I really wanted to get involved with. And then as we've grown with Bite Back, so I've been at Bite Back right from the start. And as we've grown and as we've gone, I've learned even more about the space, but I've also improved myself. Bite Back's helped me improve my personal speaking skills, my confidence. They've helped with communication skills. I've gotten so many amazing opportunities through Bite Back with some of the people I've met, some of the opportunities I've had at speaking or doing events like this. And having those opportunities has been really amazing. And I think that's something that I really wanted to get involved with. And it also obviously goes to a really, really important message. And I've learned more about the inequalities we have in the food industry, or the things that are happening in the food industry. And as I learn more and more, the more passionate I get. And I think having that passion is something that's really, really important.
Yeah, so for me, I've been campaigning since I was about 12. My first campaign was on the sugar tax with Jamie Oliver. So I campaigned with Jamie on that, and his team actually came to me and asked me about Bite Back and said, would like to join. And of course I said yes. It's an amazing opportunity to develop myself personally. As Jacob said, Bite Back is more of a tool for us to enhance our confidence and enhance skills that can go forward to our adult life and campaigning as adults. But it's also brought together me with a lot of other young people with the same minded, because before Bite Back I thought I was the only young person doing it, and it was very isolating, whereas with Bite Back a lot of people have come together, and it's all young people coming together with the same mindset, wanting to create change.
Thank you, Jacob and Harrison. So I'll ask Taran this next question. What challenges and opportunities have you found with your youth social action?
So one of the main challenges was first trying to get people involved and knowing which kind of people wanted to help us. And so as a school, what we did was, in our group, we took different types of people and we asked them whether they would be interested. We told them about our charity and we explained what the skill was, what we did was, and then they seemed to get more interested into it, and we got to spend more ideas.
Thank you so much. I think our possibly final question that I would like to hear from both parties is, what skills do you think are the most valuable to you? And if you were looking for a social action opportunity to get involved in, what would you look for? I don't know who wants to start, but
I can start. I think one of the things that I really love about Bite Back is kind of the togetherness we have in our group. We all get along really, really well together, and that helps us win our campaigns. Helps us all get along, and we can all really, really put all of our passions together. We've all got different ideas or different ways of thinking or different passions and different interests, and all of our interests and things combined together makes some really powerful campaigns, which have been very successful, which I think is really, really amazing. So our togetherness as a group has been really, really amazing. And I think, yeah, as a whole, I think that togetherness has just been really, really, really nice, like, to be involved with.
Yeah, I'll go next. Thanks, Jacob, stealing my point. For me, I think obviously I agree with Jacob that togetherness is more like a family rather than a team. I found that as we've grown older, people have got more bonds together. But it's also about the inclusion of every person. So with Bite Back, we really focus on including people not just from the big cities like London and Birmingham, like me and Jacob are from, but also we've got people from Leeds, all across the country, and all these points of views coming together means that we get a viewpoint from all across the country. Obviously, as I just said, repeating myself now, and it makes the campaigns more solid, if you know what I mean. But also, if I was looking to join a social action, it would probably be inclusion and listening to everyone, because a lot of charities around, they don't listen to young people, obviously, and it's come, and now in the present, a young person's voice is a lot more powerful than it has in the past, but it's still not as powerful as an adult voice. So I think if a charity is focusing on young people, I think that's a good green flag to want to join it.
So what I would say is I really like the ability that you can help others, and it's really interesting to meet different ideas, and as it's the younger population, you know, that's the future, and to help them get involved is really great.
Thank you, everyone. So another question which can go out to all of you is, how would you encourage other young people and adults to get involved in social action, and what are the benefits? You've already touched upon some of them, but how would you encourage others?
I can go first. I'm kind of touching on what Comfort said in the video. If you have a passion, if you have an interest, and like for me, I was quite interested in food, and that's kind of why I wanted to try and Bite Back. If you take that passion and take that interest and you really put it into something like campaigning, like for example, with us joining in the food space, health is something that child health is so important, and taking that interest and taking that passion and pushing it, no matter how big or small, is really important. Just take that passion and just go with it and see where it takes you. And kind of from my point of view as well, and my personal development with Bite Back, the more and more campaigning I've done, the more passionate I've got and the more interest in that I've got.
For me personally, I think if you look around and look at the success of other campaigns, that will, if the passion's there, as Jacob said, that will should ignite your flame even more, because you can see there's change happening in that space and want to create more change. So looking around other campaigning, other social action groups, and other young people doing the same thing as you, and also older adults as well. It doesn't matter about your age, you can always campaign for change.
Yeah, so I agree. What I would also say is, when you have an interest to something, don't worry about not having the facilities, but just try to spread awareness with what you've got. And as Harrison also said, it would be great if you could meet up with others, and therefore you combine to a larger group, and it's much easier to complete social action together than singular.
Thank you so much. I think our last question, perhaps maybe we have time for one more, is what skills have you learned? I think this has almost been answered, but if we could say in particular to our academic studies and personal development, what kind of skills do you think were gained through your social action?
I can go first. So as a vice chair, along with Harrison at Bite Back, that's really helped me with my leadership skills, which I think is a fundamental skill throughout life, being able to, take charge, lead a group. Confidence is something as well. When I was going back 3-4 years ago, I could never do an event like this, speaking in front of lots and lots of people. And because of Bite Back and the experiences that I've had, I've been able to speak at lots and lots of events, speak in front of people in public, not just over Zoom. And I think that's really helped me towards my studies, particularly. One of the subjects I take is drama. And so confidence, public speaking, getting up on stage is something that's really important. So having these opportunities and spaces to allow me to have my voice and speak in public in front of crowds is something that I personally found quite beneficial.
Yeah, I would agree with Jacob there with the confidence side of it, but also it's given me the ability to articulate myself. So before, I had all the ideas in my head and I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it and I didn't know where to say it. So Buyback had given me the way to articulate myself well. So my point sounds more valid, because I think if you come out with a point and you don't speak properly, it shouldn't be this, but if you don't speak properly and you don't explain in the right way, then people won't understand it, people won't respect your point. Whereas if you give it across well and you're confident about it, people will listen to you more.
So for me, the main key that I learned was the ability to be more confident and just talk to others in person, even though it can be more scary, and having always my voice to express my opinions properly.
Thank you, everyone. It's really inspiring to hear what you've gained. So the last question, I think we have time for only this one, is what do you think the main barriers are that stop people putting themselves forward for volunteering or other opportunities? What holds back young people?
I think one of the things is that there's a little bit of, I guess, sometimes people might be a little bit nervous or worried to start getting involved, in the fear of people, having a little dig at them or mocking them a little bit. But I don't think you should worry about that. For me, it's not something I think about. I'm doing my thing, I'm campaigning, I'm pushing for something that's really, really important. And that's all that matters, really. So I don't think if that's something that you want to get involved with, you want to get into social action, you want to get into campaigning, you shouldn't think about what people are going to say about you, because at the end of the day, you're doing something really powerful, something really important, and something really necessary.
When I was younger, and I still get it now, I get a sense of imposter syndrome. So I think, why should my opinion be heard compared to the next person? But it's not about that. Every person's opinion is valid and your point is valid. As long as you can back up your argument, you can say whatever you want, to a certain extent, obviously. But it's about, you should know that your opinion matters, and you do have the ability to voice your opinion.
I'd say try not to be scared and just try your best with what you can do. Don't worry about others, because all you're doing is just inspiring others, and even if they're saying anything about you, at the end of the day, you're just helping to grow a larger and better community.
Thank you, everyone. So that's all we have time for at the moment, but do keep asking questions and our speakers will try to answer as many as possible in the chat. So we're now going to work together to highlight the ways the education sector can better support more great social action, like we've heard from Taran, Jacob, Harrison, and Comfort. We're going to take about 10 minutes in breakout rooms to discuss the question, how can schools and others in the education sector better support young people to take part in social action? Please put your suggestions onto the Jamboard linked in the chat and make sure to nominate someone in your group to feedback to us afterwards. Welcome back, everyone. I've been reading through your suggestions on the Jamboard and they're all amazing. I really enjoyed my talk with my group. So we'd love to hear some reflections from some of you. So does anybody want to come off mute or write in the chat any ideas that they had as a group, or summarize what you were talking about?
I can start. So in my group, we talked a little bit about some of the things that have popped up actually over the last 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And it was mostly, starting early in primary schools with social action, allowing younger students to, talk about their ideas with social action and things that come up, it was like the example that came up with Harvest Fest and not knowing why they're collecting the food. And then what else did we talk about? Putting social action events in the school calendar and timetable, allowing it to be, something that is there and it's all the school can attend, rather than just an extracurricular after school thing. But also one thing that I think Deanne came up with, which was really interesting, is having an incentive for teachers to do it, to take on this extra work with social action. Could be something to look into, because as teachers are already under a lot of pressure with curriculums and stuff, it might be a way of adding this in and making it really important and useful.
I love that, especially the part on the teachers as well as the young people, because as we know, participation and collaboration works both ways. Is there anyone else that would like to share what they said in their rooms?
I can go. God, now I've got to try and remember everything that we said. One of the things we were talking about is PSEHE lessons that we have in school. We were saying that sometimes we find them repetitive. Like we've been saying that we had like the same lesson 2 years running. I think maybe quite a wild one, but I guess adjusting the curriculum for that and engaging, can't speak, sorry, putting social action into those curriculums and getting people involved. One of the other things we were talking about is debates in schools, saying that sometimes schools shut those debates down, when I think debates and getting to talk and starting a conversation is really important. So maybe encouraging debates more would be something that's really good. We're also saying about student and school newsletters, potentially promoting organisations or promoting work within their communities that they can volunteer to, things like that, putting those in the newsletter for students to see and parents as well. Olia, did I miss anything else if you want to jump in?
Yeah, we were also talking about schools putting an emphasis on personal development and volunteering alongside that, and also raising awareness for issues in the local community and also nationally. And yeah, just embedding social action into the school curriculum, into classrooms, and so students are more aware of what's happening around them and they feel supported and encouraged to take part. So yeah, does anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I can feedback for my group as well. I think I'm echoing what everyone else has said. We really touched on the importance of community in these things and connecting people. And within that, we thought fostering a community of ex-pupils as well. So staying in touch with pupils that did these projects and then trying to get them back in to talk very much within their community and from their experience was, I think, our main point. Yeah.
So interesting. We do have time for more people. So if anybody wants to report back, in particular, room 4, I saw you guys were talking about equity. If anybody would like to sort of touch upon that.
I'm happy to feedback from our room. We had a few issues with the Jamboard, but we had a really interesting conversation around how like social action can be a really great way to make the like school activities more like up to date and present. So if there's space to talk about what's happening in the news or going on like in the like present rather than just looking to the textbooks all the time, then by having a space to discuss those issues, you might be able to uncover some of the things that young people are really passionate about, and then being able to, like Ian was saying in the first session, supporting young people if they want to get involved in things that are happening right now, because sometimes it can feel like social action activities, it takes a really long time to get to an outcome, whereas if there's other momentum happening on the same topic, like in the news or in the media, sometimes it can be good to sort of piggyback on that a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely links to what our group was talking about debates in the classroom and encouraging those students who are passionate about topics like climate change, for example, to get involved. So I like what Megan was saying in the chat about role models. So does anybody want to elaborate on that?
I can. I totally agree with it. I think it's really important to have role models, even if it's just, older years or, just someone who is a young adult coming in and they can discuss their experiences and kind of find similar interests and similar experiences with the people involved
I think it's really important, and it's something we kind of do at Tutor Trust too, with undergraduate tutors going into schools. And I think it is really important. But also I wanted to touch on it, on the momentum point that Becca made. I think it's something that we see quite often with these projects in schools. They can they quite often lose momentum after a few weeks. So in our group, we were discussing maybe having like a set almost program in place, like week by week, so you don't lose that momentum, almost having these things already laid out for the teacher and for, you know, these people coming in, or the people coming into the classroom, the students, so that they know what they're doing week by week, and, you know, it doesn't lose that momentum and it doesn't stop.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to read a few responses from the Jamboard. So Room 5 discussed how we need to make sure that we have resources so that all young people can have a high quality of youth social action, which I think is an incredible point, as well as getting students mobilized, which gets them participating in social action. So if anybody else wants to report back,
Shall I make it?
Or their personal views on how we can further engage young people in social action, that'd be great.
Shall I have a go?
Yeah, go ahead. I think Denise is frozen.
Okay, in our group, we talked a lot about the importance of linking informal and formal education and how the two sectors work together, and also the importance of having passionate individuals at school, encouraging the social action, and this relationship that can be built between, for example, teachers and a charity, and what happens when, you know, these relationships break. For example, if a teacher, passionate teacher that supports social action at school leaves the school, and then, you know, maybe the momentum is being lost. We talked about the importance of funding, that sometimes if the funding comes from the government, the statutory sector might create a stronger message for the school to promote the social action. That there needs to be some level of buy-in from the senior leadership team of the school, the head teachers, for example, and the teacher helping to form the teams. There is the need of that school support, making sure that the things are youth-led. So ask young people what they would like, what they're interested in relation to youth action, without giving them any bias. And ensuring that the what of the social action is relevant to the young people, but also understanding that sometimes young people may not know what they want, so there needs to be a balance about how much direction is given, and then building on what actually, you know, young people are interested, or they kind of are inspired to take on. Elizabeth, Rebecca, and Holly, I don't know if you would like to add anything.
No, it was great. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for feeding back. We probably have time for one more person if they want to come off mute, but
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
We kind of spoke a little bit about, so I'm extremely overexposed here, the kind of the practical issues that we come across as external providers of social action projects going into schools, and we kind of talked about how ideally it would be amazing to have somebody embedded in schools whose sole responsibility is to oversee social action projects, because we talked about how teachers who are given the projects to kind of oversee, they've already got their kind of own job in terms of teaching a curriculum or whatever, and sometimes communication and practical issues come up. So we kind of talked about how beneficial it would to have somebody in school whose sole job is to kind of oversee social action projects. It just makes room for more, I think. We kind of covered that in my group.
Thank you so much. It sounds like your room was really, really exciting. So we have time for at least one more. If not, we can go to our conclusion. So does anyone have any final words on what they said in their rooms? If not, thank you for all your brilliant suggestions. These, alongside the recordings and the session summaries, will be shared with Becca afterwards. I've been so inspired from the presentations and the discussion from our showcase. I think my biggest reflection is, I think it was a point made by Harrison on how social action can sometimes feel quite isolating as a young person. So it's really sort of encouraging to know that a lot of other young people are participating in social action and making a positive change in our community.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I've really enjoyed hearing from all of you, hearing your suggestions. I like that one at the end about introducing external people in school to focus like on volunteering and charity and getting students involved in social action. I think it would be really beneficial. Even just charities coming in just to give talks, I think it would be really good for schools. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm going to hand it back to Becca now, and I hope everyone has a really wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Denise and Olia, for chairing that session. You've both been fantastic chairs, and I thought facilitated a really great discussion there. Also, a big thank you to Taran, Jacob and Harrison, who were here with us today, Comfort, who shared her video in advance. And unfortunately, we did have another speaker, Sarah, who had to drop out last minute, but did put in a lot of time. So I'm hoping to follow up with them so that we can share what they wanted to talk about as well. But before everybody goes, we do just have a poll. If you could just rate the session, it helps us to improve it as we go. I think Naomi's going to share that. But also, you've heard from Denise, Olia and Comfort today, who are on our youth steering group, and they post a monthly bulletin giving updates on their perspective on different education news, ways that young people can get involved in youth social action in education, and that goes out monthly. So the next youth bulletin is actually going to go out either tomorrow or Monday. So C1 has just shared a link in the chat, and we really encourage you to sign up to that. It really is fantastic content that they're putting together. So that is it. Thank you to all of you that have been involved, especially those of you that have been with us since 3 o'clock. I hope you've taken something from today's session. I am going to share around the recording from this. We'll break it down into the 3 sections. And also some notes and summaries of the Jamboards and discussions that we've had. If anyone has any feedback on the session that they would like to share, please do drop me an email. And if anyone wants to talk about youth engagement or increasing the amount of youth engagement that they're doing in their organization, then we can set up a one-to-one. So Helen, is there anything that you would like to share at the end of this session as well?
No, just a huge thank you to Becca as well, who's done a huge amount behind the scenes in getting today's workshop. Thank you to all the panelists and all the young people at the end. Really so much to take away. We will be doing our best to merge some of these thinking into, as I said, a one-pager, so we'll be following up and looking forward to continue to collaborate with you all to continue to make sure that all young people can access and engage with youth social action and be able to talk so eloquently about it as we've just seen and get all the benefits that we've heard. So thank you so much, and a huge thank yous to Becca and everyone at FEA for helping arrange this.
Thank you. And finally, our next youth engagement working group session is actually coming up very quickly because this one was moved for Easter. So on the 12th of May, we are going to have our next session, which is focusing on youth governance. So we're going to hear from some young trustees and staff who are supporting young people to be involved in governance mechanisms. It's not the 3-hour session that we've had today. It is just 3:30 till 5 p.m. and I will share the link for people to add that to their calendars in the follow-up email. But we would really love for lots of you who this is your first time coming to the session to continue coming, and the workshops are going to run for the remainder of this academic year, so we've got a few more to come as well. But that is it. So we'll let you go and enjoy your evenings. And thank you so much for being a part of today. So thank you, everyone. Bye.